بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. For today بإذن الله تعالى I'm going to show you how can you apply one of the strategy here, which is find the fib in one of the lesson of the mega goal syllabus unit 1. One of these lesson is the form, meaning and function. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Let's start. Actually, you can divide this lesson to 4 parts. Actually, it's according to your time and according to the level of your students. If you can take 2 points in one period or 3 and keep the fourth, it's according to your time as a teacher here. So, what are these points or goals in this lesson? Part 1 will be for modal auxiliary. Part 2 will be for adverbs of manners. Part 3 will be for prepositions of place. And the last part, which is part number 4, will be for imperative for directions. Let's start with part 1, which is modal auxiliary. Actually, here it's about specific ones which are must and should. When we use must and when we use should. Actually, you can start with one of the strategy here, which is brainstorm. It's a wonderful one. Start with asking questions. Ask your students some questions. What do they know about the modal verbs, the modal auxiliary, about must and should, when we use it? So you may ask them to give you examples of modals in general. They may say must, can, may, should. Ask them, then they have mentioned must, for example. Ask them, do you know when we use must? Okay, have them try to give some examples with must. Now what are you doing? You are making a brainstorm, okay, what they have already known about this modal auxiliary. Now you can enlist from them some information about this verb. So they may say that, teacher, we use must to talk about laws and rules. Rules at school, in a hostel, at the museum, in the street. Okay, so we relate the must to rules or laws. Have them give their own examples. Now have them try to use must as they have already listed here with rules, some rules. Give them an example of places. Give me rules here at school, in the classroom, for example, in a museum, for example, in the street. You can give them some prompts to try to give you some their own examples here with must. Then you can write down one of their own examples on the board, or if you have your own example, like that. So you must stop at the traffic lights. It's a rule. If you don't that, you may pay a fine. So you must also we can have it in the affirmative form, or you can have it in the negative form. You mustn't park on the sidewalk. This is another rule in the street. So by this, the students by themselves, by using the strategy brainstorm, they have given you some of the ideas about must, when we use it, and where, and also give you some examples that you can use it to write it on the board and show them. We can use it in the affirmative or the negative way, the negative form, to talk about laws and rules. Now you can ask them to give you more and more of the examples. Ask them when we used. Now we have finished with should. This is task number 1. Okay, let's move to another auxiliary, which is should. Again, the same way. We start with the brainstorm. They may give their own examples. You may ask them, when we use should, we use should to give. You may enlist from them, teacher, we use it to give an advice. Have them give their own example. Give me some examples. How can you use should to give an advice? Write, you can write also any of their examples on the board, or if you have your own, it's okay. You should drive, for example, here, you should drive under the speed limit. This is affirmative advice here. Or you can use the negative, you shouldn't eat when you are driving. This is negative. So this is, again, you are trying to elicit from the students when we use should and they said, teacher, we use it with an advice, then ask them to give more of their examples if they would like. Then at the end you can differentiate between, they may get confused, some of them they may get confused. You said we sometimes get confused between must and should, but must is stronger than should, and we use it in the formal and the official tone actually. So this is the difference between should and must, and as we have mentioned before also, that must for rules and laws and should most of the time for the advice, but must is the stronger one. This is number 2. So here we have finished with the strategy brainstorm. We just enlisting from the students the examples, the rule, when we use this must, when we use should, their own examples. Now let's move to another strategy, which is find the fib. More and more is here with this strategy, which is very effective. We are trying to apply or learn the students how they can use must and should in different cases, different situations. On the board, write the example with a mistake as usual, as we have mentioned before. Find the fib mean find the search for the mistake. So you write down an example with a mistake, such as, at school you shouldn't bring mobile phone. It's at school, so it's a rule here. So we should say shouldn't, it's not an advice. Here it's a rule at school. So teacher, it's must here, not should. So they may correct it, instead of shouldn't, it is mustn't or must not. Why? Because it's a rule here. Another example. So here they have find the fib in this sentence. Done. Another example. Your friend eats a lot of sweet. Give an example. So you may write it in this way. You must not eat a lot of sweet. It's an advice. I ask you for an advice. They may say, teacher, no, teacher, this is an advice. So a teacher, with the advice, we don't use must, we use should. So here it will be shouldn't. So here it's an advice. So instead of must, we are going to use should. So the sentence will be, you shouldn't eat a lot of sweet. This is how can we apply the strategy find the fib. Then another way for applying the strategy find the fib, they can apply by themselves. How? They may make their own examples. You don't have to write the example on the board and ask them. They have their own examples. They may write their own example on a paper, or they would like to write it on the board for all of the students. Then they start to ask each other to find the fib here. Now it's the time to move to the book. Okay, and I think that this is the time for the weak students actually. So now we have finished with the brainstorm. They have listed the rule, they have given their own example, we apply the strategy find the fib, and they give more example, and they search for the mistakes, and they have found the mistake. Now it's the time, I think, that for the weak student to show if they have gotten the idea. So have a student read the instructions. It's very important to read the instructions carefully and slowly and explain it to them. So it's time for weak student to try to answer now, to check if they get the idea or not. Give them time. Like for example, this exercise, you can give them, for example, like 5 to 7 minutes. Okay, then start to pick, exercise 1 will do it a certain students, 2 will be for you pick the students that you know that they weak students, or they still have some doubts or something. So start to pick these students to answer the exercise and check their answers with them. I have add to you, this is the exercise. This is exercise A. You have to complete the conversation using your own words. These are the conversation, and they have to finish the conversation here with their own words. Okay, and I have also add the answers for you to check with your students. By this, we have finished our lesson for today. That's all for today. Thanks a lot for all of you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.